Rito Maioha. Do I got that right? Rito Maioha. Now, so who's leading us off here?
So, tēnā koutou katoa, ko Cathy Wilson, tōko ingoa. I'm a board member at Rito Maioha, representing Rito Maioha, and with me is...
Kia ora tātou, my name is Tilly, I'm from Childspace.
Kia ora, Rob McCann from Rito Maioha.
Kia ora, Lauren. I'm from Childspace as well.
All right, I know we introduced ourselves before you came in. So I'm Greg O'Connor, the chair.
Craig Fleming from Mamakirkia.
James Mega, Rangitata, the secretary.
Francisco Hernandez, list MP.
Right, so thank you. 10 minutes and hopefully we can time for questions.
Excellent. So on behalf of Rito Maioha and Childspace, we're here to speak to the petition to implement a 1-to-4 ratio for under threes. We're here today because children can't advocate for themselves. Children do not get a say, but deserve more than the care and attention being afforded by the current legislation standards. That current standard is the ratio of teachers to children that was arbitrarily set in the 1960s and then again in the 1990s without any evidence or research. The current ratio of teachers to children in ECE are 1 teacher to 5 children under 2 years and 2 teachers for 20 children over the age of 2. What that means is that as soon as a child turns 2, there can be 20 two-year-olds being supervised, supported and cared for with only 2 teachers. My colleague Tui will talk more about what that looks like in practice and how unworkable that is. The ratios are also incompatible with science, which acknowledges that a human being is an infant until they reach the age of 3 years. Yet, our current model creates an arbitrary cutoff at 2 years. That leaves 2 to 3-year-old children as the lowest funded group. Yet, these children have all the needs of under 2s children, for example, nappy changing, developing social skills, and developing language. So what we have is an outdated minimum ratio that is unsafe, and that is the government continues to use when setting budgets and as the basis of the minimum standard in ECE. Now, we should note that despite the additional cost to ECE services, many high-quality providers have already put in place lower children-to-teacher ratios, and they fund this through parental fees or reduced margins. Not all providers can afford to do this. And that brings us back to what we're asking Parliament to do, which is to draw a line in the sand and commit to a lower ratio and ensure that all children in ECE have a better and safer baseline of service. In fact, that commitment was in the National Party education policy, and I quote, "National will progressively improve the adult-to-child ratio for under 2-year-olds in early childhood education." Ratios are not just about safety and quality issue for our tamariki. They are one of the building blocks of ECE. So when we get it wrong, any changes to ECE policy and funding can cause a range of unintended consequences. Budget 2023 was an example of that. Let's look at the rationale for lower ratios. Lower ratios are beneficial for children, not just because they're safer, but they enable teachers to focus on children. They better support child-staff relationships. They increase the quality of interactions between adults and children, and they reduce the stress on tamariki. If we are not enabling that kind of interaction I've just listed, we're not providing quality ECE, which is what is required for children to develop to their full potential. Before I hand you over to my colleague Tui, I'd like to conclude with this. When tamariki are young, they need dedicated attention to stay safe and have their needs tended to. But it's much more than that. Quality ECE requires qualified teachers to develop child-staff relationships. Because the research is clear, the quality of interactions between adults and children play a hugely important role in stimulating early learning. And as parents, if you're putting your children into ECE, you want them to be cared for and educated because they are our most precious and treasured gifts. Kia ora.
Thank you, Cathy. Kia ora tātou, my name's Tilly again, nice to see you guys. And just in case, I know this is quite academic so far, just on paper, because you're still not seeing an issue with this 2 to 20 ratio, which is an effective ratio of 1 teacher to every 10 2-year-olds, I'd like to try and paint a practical picture. So right now between the council here on the board on the side, we've got 9 people in this room. So let's say we're a 20-place ECE service. My colleague could be next door with all the 4 and 5-year-olds, and I could be here with 9 2-year-olds. Let's say you're all 2, right? Because you're all 2, you're still in nappies. Your language is still developing, so I have to pay very close attention to your individual cues and gestures to try and understand what you might need moment to moment. Your brains are all still developing, so you often find it quite hard to regulate your own emotions. You need me to help you with that, and that affects your behaviour and affects your behaviour towards other children in the class. You're experimenting with power and autonomy and that kind of thing when you're 2 years old, and that can make things a bit noisy or dangerous for other people. And you will require assistance with the most basic self-care, like changing, getting dressed, changing your nappy, eating, sleeping, even blowing your nose, things like that. You'll need my help. And almost half of you, based on the stats, will have some kind of additional physical, emotional, or cognitive need. So I'm sure you can appreciate already what an impossible situation operating at these minimum standards is, but I'm just gonna try and paint the picture a little bit further just in case you're still not quite convinced. So let's say here we are in our toddler room here with you 9 2-year-olds, and you're all very lovely, and we've had a bit of a rough morning because you guys all get dropped off at about the same time, and I'm the only teacher to greet you and your family and check in on how you've slept and any medication you might need to take and what our plans are for the day, and to give you each the individual attention that you actually need to feel safe, to be able to say goodbye to your parent and to settle in with us for the day. So stretched a bit thin, but we've made it. Had morning tea, and it's just after morning tea and I'm trying to clear the dishes away when suddenly I notice that James needs a nappy change. So instead of what I would like to do, which is to go have a nice unhurried one-on-one care moment with James, I instead have to go get you changed as quickly as possible while trying to supervise the rest of the room, which, as you can imagine, is quite hard to do from the bathroom. So while I'm in there, I don't notice that Greg has also needed a nappy change and has instead taken it upon himself, removed his own nappy, and is now smearing the walls with poo. Eventually, when I do make it back into the room and I notice this, and I'm busy trying to scrub poo off Greg and off the walls, the other Greg has
parliament.
yes, the other Greg has bitten Francisco, and you're both howling because there's only one red truck and you both want it. And two of your court people have slid the door open and are running towards the gate that a parent has inadvertently left open on the way out. And Lauren's in the corner having a breakdown because she has additional needs, and it's all too noisy in here. The dishes still aren't done. My hands are still covered in poo. You can see how this is not going to work, right? These are real examples of things that have happened and continue to happen in toddler rooms across the country. Luckily, as Cathy mentioned, most of us staff to a higher ratio than that, so we can mitigate some of the negative consequences of these kinds of things. But again, not everyone can afford to do this. We don't have time to go through all the examples of how having this higher teacher-to-child ratio would be better for teachers and for tamariki. I've got some further examples if you'd like to read them later. But yes, early childhood teachers are amazing, but no one is superhuman. And yeah, I think most parents, if they could choose to have just 1 2-year-old or more than that, well, you can imagine what they're thinking.
So if you've heard from my colleague Tui, the minimum standards are not enabling the basic care, let alone any form of education for our youngest and most vulnerable children in Aotearoa, New Zealand. With regulation and funding reviews currently underway, we and the thousands of teachers, actually 6,253, that have signed this petition are asking this committee to recognise the importance of ECE ratios. Ratios are the foundation upon which ECE regulation and funding are built. They set how much time and the quality of relationships between a teacher and children. We cannot effectively regulate or fund based on these outdated, unsafe and impossible ratios. This is a place from which to start any reform, and the time for that reform is now. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to taking questions.
Oh, Fleming.
Thank you. It's one of the best presentations I've heard. Obviously, not that it was my first year in Parliament. That's outstanding.
It's lucky you've had your 5 kids already, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Spookily accurate.
Yeah, that's right.
What can you say?
We have we're an open plan area. We've got 10 MPs with no supervision.
Horrifying.